Is your pipeline failing because you have issues verifying your GitLab account? Or do you simply need more power and minutes, and the free minutes from GitLab.com are not enough? I may have a possible solution for you. If you have a Linux server running somewhere, that could be a great starting point. In this tutorial, I'll be using AWS EC2 to show you step by step how to configure your own GitLab Runner and run jobs on your own infrastructure. Yes, we'll have to type in quite a few commands and use scary tools like Vim, but don't worry, you don't need to be a computer genius to get this to run. I'll guide you through the process step by step until your runner is registered with GitLab and you can see your jobs running. This sounds like the kind of tutorial you are looking for? Let's dive into this. So before we begin, here is an overview of what we will do in this tutorial. We're going to create, first of all, a new virtual machine on AWS. We're going to use here the EC2 server. And on that virtual machine, we're going to install the GitLab Runner, and we're going to install any required dependencies on the virtual machine as well. Finally, we're going to configure the GitLab Runner to work with GitLab.com. Please bear in mind that this is a fully manual process that is ideal for beginners who want to get started with GitLab CI. This is by no means a production-ready setup, and you shouldn't use it for production. We will do everything from a browser, so you don't need to install any software on your computer. The first step that you need to do is to create an AWS account. And if you're a new AWS user, customer, wherever you put it, they offer you a free tier. So there are some services that you can use for free for the next 12 months, but you still need to provide them with billing details. So what I'm showing you in this tutorial should be absolutely free for you, but just bear in mind, in case you make some settings or use some other services, you may see charges in your account, so I cannot fully guarantee that. The first thing that we want to do is to start with the EC2 service, and here we're going to create a new instance. So somewhere in your account, you should see launch instance. And what you're going to see here is a list of Amazon images that we can use. And we're going to use simply Amazon Linux 2, which is based on Red Hat, and that is a great choice for what we're trying to do. Next is a step where, depending on what you select, you may encounter some additional costs. By default, you will see here that I have the T2, that micro instance selected. This is a very small instance. It has only one virtual CPU and only 1 gig of memory. But for basic jobs in GitLab CI, that should be enough. However, if you think you need more power, I highly recommend that you go a bit higher, for example, T2 large or anything else. In the beginning, it's totally fine to start with something small to see exactly how much you need, and later on you can also add additional instances. So that is absolutely fine. I'm going to go ahead here, review and launch. And without modifying any other settings, I'm going to click here on launch. What's important here is that you will get this window with creating a security key in order to access this instance. So even if we're not going to use the key itself, we still need to generate it because we will need to log in. So we're going to create here a new key pair. And feel free to name it as you wish. Simply going to call it GitLab Runner. And I'm going to go ahead also to download this key pair. Once you did that, you can click here on Launch Instances. Now, this will take a minute or two to complete, so feel free to grab a cup of coffee and take a short break. I'm going to check here what the instance is doing by clicking on View Instances. So after just a bit, you'll see here that the instance state is running. So everything seems to be working properly. And what we can do next is to select this instance that we have. And then you will see here this connect button. And this connect button will allow us to connect directly to the instance itself without downloading any additional software or configuring any keys locally. So that's a very handy way of connecting to it. Whatever default settings we have here, they're absolutely fine. So all you have to do is click on connect. And GitLab has then connected to this instance, and now we have a terminal window directly in our browser. Now bear in mind, this is still being developed and it's not perfect. So there are a few things that work a bit differently than you would have in a normal terminal. But especially for beginners, that is a great way because it really reduces a lot of the complexity that you normally have. So here we'll be able to type commands. And the first command that we want to type is to update dependencies. So I'm going to use here sudo yum, because this is the package manager that we're using. We're providing here -y to make sure that we're not getting any questions. And we're going to type here update. We'll find all the commands that I'm typing here also in the video description. So if it's easier for you just to paste them from there, that's also fine. Okay, so we don't have anything to update. We're going to start after this installing the first dependency. So it's almost the same command as before, but this time I'm going to write here install, and the dependency is called Git. All right, so let's make sure that Git has been properly installed. So we're going to use here git -- version. And if we're getting the current Git version, it means that we are on the right track. Clear this window and start from the top. Next, we want to install Docker. Now, ideally, we want to have a GitLab Runner with a Docker Executor. So, of course, if we don't have Docker installed, it's going to be very hard to use the Docker Executor. So for this, we're going to type another command. We're going to start with sudo. And this time, we're going to use the Amazon Linux extras. And from here, we're going to install Docker. So it seems that the installation was successful. I'm going to clear again the window. And the next step is to add our user, which is EC2-user, to the Docker group. So for that, we're going to use user mode. And we're going to add the user to the Docker group. And the user is EC2-user. Okay, we're not getting anything back from this. But if we're typing the command groups, and we are checking in which group is the EC2 user, we should see that it also is part of the Docker group. Finally, in terms of Docker, we also want to make sure that the Docker daemon is started automatically. Otherwise, we're going to get some issues. So here we're going to use the system control, enable Docker. So this will ensure that Docker is started automatically. And finally, what we should do is to restart our instance. So we're going to reboot here. And this will take a few minutes maybe to restart, but we don't need to do anything. We're going to lose connection for a while, but we can reestablish connection by simply refreshing the browser window in a few minutes. So just take another short break and come back, hit that refresh button in your browser, and then you should be able to reconnect to your instance. All right, so let's go back, click that refresh button and try to reestablish the connection. And we're getting back the prompt. So it means that the restart has been efficient and we're back in business. So the last thing that we did was to install Docker and to make sure that it's starting automatically. So if it has been started automatically, then we should be able to run a basic Docker command. So we're going to use here Docker run. And the most basic Docker image that we can use is hello world. And this will ensure that our Docker installation is successful. So we're not being able to find this image, it's being pulled. But then finally, we're getting this message here, hello from Docker. So it means that at this point, Docker has been successfully installed here. Now we have installed a lot of dependencies, but we still need the main thing, and that is the GitLab Runner. Finding the right address to download the GitLab Runner is not so easy. So you'll find this in the video description. And I'm going to simply go ahead and paste it here. So it is a few hundred megabytes in size. So it will take a few seconds to download this. But afterwards, we should be up and running. Right, so we can see here, if we list all the files that are available, we're going to see here that we have the GitLab Runner. So in order to actually start the installation process, what we need to do is to use sudo rpm-i, and then I'm going to simply write here GitLab Runner. And with a tab, I will automatically complete this and hit the enter. And we're going to start the installation process. While the installation process is running, we're going to go in GitLab and we're going to prepare a few things here. In order to use a runner with GitLab, you need to register it with your account. You can do that on a project level, but what I recommend you do is to do it on a group level. So if you haven't used any group so far, probably now is the best time to go ahead and create a new group. And we can call the group whatever you wish. So I'm going to simply call it the GitLab Runner group. But probably this is not the smartest name, so don't use absolutely the same. I'm going to also make sure that this is a private group, and the rest of the information here is not so important. So just going to go ahead and create this group. And inside this group, you can create new projects, or you can move existing projects into this group. So just keep that in mind. The part where I'm getting is the settings. So a project, but also a group will have this part with settings. And if we go in settings, CI/CD, we're going to see here something with runners. So we can expand this part, and we're going to see a few things here. So first of all, if this is a validated account, we have access to shared runners, but we don't want to use the shared runners from GitLab in this project. So I'm going to go ahead and disable this. And what we actually want to do is to create a group runner. And we already did a few steps, so like starting to install the runner, and then we need to also register the runner. So this is just the page that we need to see at this point, just to make sure everything is working properly. Let's go back here, and what we can see, well, essentially we don't see any errors, so that's a good thing. It means that this step has been successful. So in this regard, we're going to start registering our runner. So the runner has been installed on our virtual machine, but it's currently not doing anything. So what we want to do is to tell GitLab, hey, we have here a runner that we want to register with this group. And essentially you can send any jobs to this runner. It's available here. So in order to do that, we need to go through this registration process. I'm going to type here the command sudo gitlab-runner register. And this is practically something that we need to do step by step. So we're going to get different questions. So first of all, we need the GitLab instance URL. Because I'm using gitlab.com, I'm going to get this information from here, and you will see here the address. So I'm going to simply click here on copy URL, go back here and paste this, and hit enter. Then we need the registration token. This is also being displayed here. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this token as well. We can enter a description for this runner on AWS EC2. But of course, the description is optional, but it can help you if you're managing multiple runners understand like where they're running and why did you create them. You can also assign tags to your runner. We're going to skip this because we can also manage this directly from GitLab, so there's no need to do this right away. So if to skip, just hit enter. You can also enter an optional maintenance node. So we're going to hit enter again to skip this. And now comes the most important part. And we need to specify the executor. And there are different executors. And just in case you're a bit confused about what is with all these executors, I'll link in the video description a blog post that explains all these different executors. Now, in most cases, and especially if you want to use GitLab as you have it on gitlab.com, what you want to use is a Docker executor. The next executor that you may want to use is shell. But in this case, I'm going to only specify the Docker executor because I want to specify a Docker image in the pipeline configuration. I don't want to rely on any dependencies that are on the virtual machines. So this decouples our jobs and pipelines from the infrastructure where we're running our jobs. So I'm going to simply type here Docker. And now we have the possibility of specifying the default Docker image. Generally on gitlab.com, Ruby is the default image, but I just like to specify something small. So I'm going to use here Alpine. And what we're getting back is the runner registered successfully. So that's already a very good thing. Let's clear this and check if our runner is running properly. So we can use here again the command GitLab Runner. And we can check the status. So it's telling us service is running, giving us some information about the platform. But at this point, we can go back here in GitLab and we can refresh this page. And what we want to see in runners is available runners. You see here the description that we have. We have the version of the runner, where the runner is working. We have the possibility of editing some settings just in case we want to change something about this runner. So I told you before, you can still add some tags, but this is what we want to do at this point. In terms of tags, just in case you have specified tags, it's also important to have this enabled run untagged jobs. So just in case you have jobs that don't have any tags in their configuration, you still want to run those as well, just to keep that in mind in case your jobs aren't running. So far so good. I think we're making great progress. And by the way, if you're happy with this tutorial and you think you're learning something new, you can support me create more tutorials like this one by giving this video a like and subscribing to my channel. It really helps a lot. Now let's continue with the rest of the tutorial, where we're going to go ahead and actually create a job and make sure that it properly runs. We're going to go through different scenarios. There are a few things that we really want to make sure that they work properly. I'm going to go back here inside the group itself, and I'm going to create a new project. And it's going to be a blank project. So I'm essentially testing the runner just to make sure that everything is working properly. I'm not going to initialize here with a README. I'm simply going to go ahead and create this project. So let's click here on New File. And this will open up the Web IDE. And what we want to do is to define the GitLab-CI configuration for a simple job. So let's imagine here that we are trying to build something. So I'm going to call here the job build. And we're going to use the image Alpine. So this will test if we have the right executor. And here inside the script, we can have a simple script. So for example, we can put some text into a file. So this will be echo hello, and we can put it in a file called, let's say, index.html. Doesn't really matter so much. And what we can also test, if we define, for example, artifacts, if they're properly saved, we're going to simply define this file as an artifact. All right, so we can go ahead, commit these changes. I'm going to commit directly in the main branch. And this should already start the pipeline. Let's go inside the project here. And we're going to see here the job testing the runner, and the pipeline has been started. So we can click on it to see what's going on. And our build is already done. So that already looks pretty good. So let's try to understand what has happened here just to make sure that we are right on track. So we're getting here in the beginning information about the runner. This is the runner version that we have. It's telling us on which runner this is running. So that's important information. We can see that we're not using the shared runners from GitLab. Second of all, we can see here that we're using a Docker Executor with the image that we have specified. This image is being pulled, the environment is being prepared, and so on. Git is working properly, so this is why we have installed Git, because we're working with the Git repository. We have executed this command, created a new file, and then also the artifacts have been uploaded. So that's a pretty important step right there. So we have job artifacts, we can take a look at them, we see that we have this file. So from that perspective, everything seems to be great. Now, the problem usually occurs when we're trying to work with Docker and when we're trying to build a Docker image. So let me show you what I mean by that. I'm going to expand here a bit the example that we have. And I'm going to simply go ahead and paste an existing configuration that I have. I'm going to find it here in the video description as well. I'm just going to go ahead and select everything, remove it. It's going to have here two stages, build and package. So in the build stage, that's pretty similar to what we did before. But then when we're building the Docker image, this is when things get a bit tricky because we're using here Docker in Docker. This requires some special permissions. And additionally, we're going to require here also this variable. We are overriding some configuration that will ensure things are working properly. And what we're doing here is a few things. First of all, we're logging into the Docker registry. This is where we're going to store our Docker image. Then we're building the image, pretty simple, just the latest version. And then we're pushing it. So let's go ahead and try this out and see if it works or not. Again, I'm going to commit here to the main branch. And I don't want to go ahead and create a new merge request. So let's jump back into the job and see what the pipeline is currently doing. So the first stage of the pipeline, the build, has worked without any issues. And then we're going to take a look at this current one to see what's going on here. So as you can notice here, something is wrong. Something doesn't work properly. We're getting here some issues. So in order to understand what's happening here, we'll see here that actually our problems start from the beginning. So we are having some issues here with, let's see what's the problem. We have some health check error issues. We're pulling this Docker image. And then finally, we're getting something like we cannot connect to this image. So that's a bit the issue that we are facing right now. And one of the reasons why this is happening is due to the fact that this Docker installation that we have doesn't have some elevated privileges that are required for actually building the image. So if we're looking here a bit on this part with the errors, essentially you're going to see this mount permission denied, are you root? So this kind of like doesn't really tell us like what's the problem, but I can tell you what the problem is. And the problem is that our GitLab Runner is not running in a privileged way. And in order to get that to run as well, there's still an additional step that we want to do. But I don't want to scare you or anything. I'm just going to explain a bit why these errors appear and what is the solution to it, so that in case you see it, you don't freak out and you know exactly what needs to be done. So I'm going to jump back here inside the terminal. And what we want to do here is to edit a file, which is the config.toml file. So I'm going to use here text editor, which is Vim. And just in case this terminal doesn't respond anymore, I'm just going to go back and hit that refresh button. It happens from time to time. I told you in the beginning that sometimes, a few things are a bit buggy. So no worries about that. So sudo vim. This is the fancy text editor that a lot of people are scared about, but I'm going to take it step by step. And we're going to go here in ATC, GitLab Runner. So this automatic text that I'm writing here, whenever you're writing a few letters, you can just click on tab and that will be completed for you. So auto completion. And the file that we want to edit is this config.toml. All right, so we have everything in place here. And this is the contents of the file. It's not huge. We can use our cursor to navigate around here. So your arrow keys on your keyboard can be used to go up and down and left and right. So that's one thing. So what we want to do here is to go a bit all the way to this line where it says privileged. So we can simply navigate and you will see here the value is false. So what we want to do here is to override this. Now, if you start typing, that's not a good idea because it will not change the file. We need to enter an edit mode. So in order to enter this edit mode, or officially called insert mode, we're going to press I on the keyboard. And you should see here right at the bottom, you will see here insert. So this is telling you you are now in insert mode. So that's all right. We can still navigate with our keys, with our arrows. And I'm going to go ahead and remove here false. And we can simply write true, right? Now, in order to exit the insert mode, we will not press I again because that will simply insert more text here. This time I'm going to press the escape key. And you will see here, insert mode has been disabled. It doesn't appear anymore. And then here comes the tricky part. What we want to do is now exit this file. And bear in mind, we haven't saved any changes. So what I like to do is to simply type column. And you will see here it appears right at the bottom of the screen. And I'm going to type X. So this means save and exit. So column X, and then I'm going to hit enter. And you'll get a message here that the file has been written, right? So this is exactly what we want to see. So far so good. The next step would be to restart the runner. So I'm going to write here sudo GitLab-runner restart, because we want to have the GitLab Runner start again with this configuration that we have changed here. So I'm going to try again status. So we see service is running. So this didn't take very long to do. And then we can go back to our job that failed. And we don't need to make any changes. We can just hit this retry button. And then job will restart. And hopefully, fingers crossed, this time, everything will work out just fine. And what you can see already is that the job is still failing, but that's absolutely all right. This time we're going to see here that, of course, we have a lot of logs, but just up to this point, we don't have anything that looks similar to this one. It's actually telling us where the Docker daemon has started. It's telling us on which port it is listening and everything. So from this perspective, everything is working just fine. We can take a look here and to understand what has happened. So Docker build has failed. And the reason is we don't have a Docker file. So yeah, that's a fair reason for this to fail. Without a Docker file, we cannot actually build anything. So we're going to go ahead and create a simple Docker file. So let's start here from Nginx. And we're simply going to go ahead and copy the index.html file. I'm going to copy it in the user, share, Nginx, HTML folder. That should be a valid Docker file that we can use. The most important thing about these pipelines is to not freak out when you see errors, but to try to understand what has happened before. How do the logs look in the previous job? How do the logs look in the current job? What's the reason? Why did this job fail? Try to understand as much as possible. Try to make sense of the logs. Sometimes they are weird and they're a bit hard to understand. In most cases, they contain some hints like what has happened, why did it fail? Like in the previous example, I haven't specified a Docker file. Absolutely fine. That can happen. We will not work without that Docker file. So we're going to wait a few more minutes for this job to complete, just to make sure that we have everything up and running. So I can already see that things are looking much better. The image has been built, and now it is being pushed to the repository. So yeah, congratulations. The job has been successful. Probably if you look inside the repository, we're going to find that image there. So I would say that with the current configuration that we have really managed to properly test this runner to make sure that the main functionality that we need is working properly, and that is we have a Docker Executor, so we should be able to see the Docker image that we have specified here. Our artifacts are being pushed from one job to the other, so that's working without any issues. And additionally, we can properly build Docker images because that's also an important functionality. So with that being said, this is the tutorial for today. I hope that you have managed to follow along, but just in case you're facing any issues or any problems, do check the video description because I'll be putting there any updates, also all the commands and all the instructions that you need in order to get this to run as well on your AWS instance. I hope this was useful. If that was the case, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel. It really helps a lot. Any comment, any thumbs up, any subscription helps me create more content like this and dedicate my time more to YouTube and to helping you guys manage and understand this kind of things. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.